Hi everyone. Since I've started posting my videos of primarily Tool drum songs, I've received a large number of comments and questions asking me how do I learn how to play these polyrhythms. I think one of the hardest parts of playing advanced songs on drums of any type is actually figuring out the sticking and the patterns that the drummer's playing. Once you know in your head what the drummer's doing, then it's not so difficult to replicate it on the drum set. But if you can't even figure out what the sticking is or the pattern is, you're really starting at a disadvantage. So I thought I would take a few minutes to show my process of learning these. The first thing is I don't download or buy tablature, and I'm not learning it from that. I'm learning it all by ear. I know how to read music, but I don't think there's any written drum music other than tab for Tool, so that doesn't apply here either. So the first step is understanding that with Tool polyrhythms, virtually everything is repeated. I can't really think of any instance where Danny plays a complex polyrhythmic pattern only one time. Almost everywhere he plays a sequential pattern and then he repeats it either again immediately or somewhere later in the song, but usually it's immediate. So what I'd like to do today is go over 3 polyrhythms that Danny plays in his songs. The first is the easiest, which is the beginning or the most of the song of Reflection. The second one is Lateralis, the drum pattern at the beginning of Lateralis, or Lateralis, however it's pronounced. And the last one is Rosetta Stoned. What I'm doing here is not doing a thing of this is how you play it. I'm doing a thing of this is how you figure out how to play it. So hopefully that will be helpful. So the first thing that I do when I'm trying to learn a pattern is, with Tool anyway, is I identify where is the bass drum in the pattern, because the bass drum is always irregular and it is the key to unlocking for me the whole pattern. So I find that my wife's car stereo has the best place to really hear the bass drum. Like my iPod with the earbuds in, you can't, there's not enough dynamic range in those, and so you can't tell if it's a floor tom or the next tom up or the kick drum, and so it gets really confusing. But in a good stereo system, you can, especially in a close quarters like a car, you can pick out the bass or kick drum in the pattern really easily. So that's the first thing I do. And then the second step of learning, once I figure out where the bass drum is I try to fit then the other parts around it. Generally, the hardest thing to add is the hi-hat with the other foot for me, but you just have to figure out how it sinks in with the other pieces. And then I add the toms, and then I can figure out the sticking of the toms later. So the first one I'll play is Reflection, and I'll show where the bass drum is and then how I fit it over the top. The key to learning these also is you can't play them along with the record full speed. You got to try to listen to them, play them with your fingers, play them at your desk, play them in your bedroom, with your headphones on, play them in the car like I do when I'm driving on the steering wheel with my feet. And then when I come to the drums, I'm more prepared to learn the pattern and to actually play it. So, and then when I do play it, I play it very slowly at first to try to get all the pieces to fit. So here's Reflection. So you can hear that the bass drum is going in the spaces from the toms. This is not the pattern. At first glance, when you listen to the song, you might think that's the pattern, but the bass drum is providing space in between those fills, and that's how you figure it out. So. Okay, so once you understand the slow part of the pattern, then you can add the hi-hat in. But adding the hi-hat takes you really slowing things down and then slowly adding it in. Okay, so that's really my process. Song 2, Lateralis, is a little bit more difficult. It has more parts over the top. It's a little more difficult to discern. But again, the kick drum is the key. Now, the other interesting thing about learning the Lateralis pattern is that the hi-hat creates a polyrhythm when it comes in with the kick drum that's independent of the hands. So that pattern, there's no magic to figuring it out. You just have to really slow it down, really slow, and see how they work together. So let me just show that one. Okay, so what I did is I identified where the bass drum was in the song and then put the toms around it, and it fits very neatly. Now I'll add the hi-hat, and I'll play it with the toms and without the toms, so you can see how the hi-hat and the kick drum interact with each other, and then how they interact with the toms when you add them. Okay, so you can see that the pattern between the kick drum and the hi-hat is, so it goes, so it's opposite the hi-hat, with the hi-hat, opposite the hi-hat, open space. Opposite the hi-hat, with the hi-hat, opposite the hi-hat, open space. That was very important to me in figuring out the pattern. Once I got those two down where I could just go, then adding the hands over the top wasn't so difficult because doing the 2 feet had just become totally second nature. I mean, I practiced that I probably sat for like, 10 or 15 minutes and just went. Just to totally memorize that in my head, just hardwire it. Okay, the last pattern that I'll cover is Rosetta Stoned.